Welcome to Harvest Club. It's great to have you here all tonight. Now, while my physical audience is busy finding their seats and getting themselves comfortable, I'm just going to quickly say hello to our Zoom audience here. I can see you. Hello, everyone. And so I would like to invite you to please pop your cameras on. So we have people here that have just arrived from the farm. We have people here that have just arrived from their kids, from work. So even if you are in your pajamas, it's okay. You had a hard day and good for you. But pop your cameras on so that I can see you and you can actually join us in the room. Hello, Andre. Hello, Peter. Hi, Brad. Hi, Anita. I see you. Hello, Morgan. I see you. So thank you for joining us. So, before I start, I think we can all admit that the world is a little crazy right now, right? Like, who thinks the world is like a little bit crazy? There are so many problems in the world, and it can sometimes feel quite overwhelming. And, you look around us and people are getting sicker than ever. Actually, maybe not ever. I think the Black Plague was like a pretty rough time to live. So maybe not ever, but certainly in our modern times, people tend to now be getting sicker. And, our medical system is absolutely amazing for all acute conditions. So doctors can absolutely save your life if you land up in the ER and you need a heart operation, or you need an antibiotic that's going to save your life. So our medical institutions are amazing at dealing with emergencies. But when it comes to chronic conditions and chronic health, it's not so good, right? We're just getting sicker and sicker all around the world. And our food systems are a problem because we have the situation like with agriculture, where we've got our agriculture systems are also a problem in that we've got these siloed systems. So with, like in the medical industry, the doctors are encouraged to become specialists. And so they specialize, but they forget about the whole picture, the holistic picture. And the same with agriculture. We have all these specialties, and it's so focused on efficiency that what you end up having is that you've got a monocrop over here, and then you've got a feedlot over there. The one needs fertilizer and inputs in order to fertilize the soil, and the other one has such an abundance that it creates toxic waste. There's a problem there when you start to focus so much on efficiency that you lose sight of the big picture. You lose sight of how the natural systems work. And what I so appreciate, on Zoom, when I say I see you, I also mean that I really appreciate you. I appreciate everyone in this room, and I appreciate everyone joining in from Zoom right now. And we have quite a large audience, by the way. People are joining in all the time. And I saw we had people from Limpopo, people from Riversdale, people from Knysna. There were people from, obviously, from Cape Town. There are people joining in from all over. Middelburg, fantastic. Hello to everyone. So I really appreciate you all joining in because, it's so easy to say, oh, we've got so many problems in the world, and to complain about the problems. We have problems with politics. We have problems with the economy. We have problems with our health. We have problems with our food systems, with our agriculture, with so many different systems. But you're actually here. You showed up. You showed up there on home, on Zoom, and you showed up here in the room. And what's fantastic about that is that we are learning together about how we can fix some of these systems. And even if it's just that, even if it's learning, it's sharing, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We need to be able to highlight the information that works from people who've already tried it and tested it, and then keep innovating from there. And that is what has been so exciting for me with this Harvest Club initiative. Now, for those of you who don't know me from Zoom, and some of you in the room, my name is Robin de Klerk. I haven't introduced myself yet. So hello, I'm Robin. And I started this Harvest Club just a few months ago. So it was in March. I had an idea where I thought, I want to try and see if we can connect farmers who are doing amazing work, that are farming in a biodynamic, organic, or regenerative way, and connect them with the food makers who want to be able to make food products using the much higher quality foods. And then connect that to the people who are willing to buy those foods for their own health, for the sake of the environment, for the sake of the planet. There's so many different reasons why we want to support that. And we need a system to be able to do that. And I was speaking to one of the local farmers who happens to be in the room tonight, Rachel from Overberg Pasture Poultry, about how can we achieve this, because our food systems are broken. Our food systems are broken because we have a mass agriculture system that is dependent on chemical inputs. And we have a supermarket system that supports those chemical farmers, because the smaller regenerative farmers, the organic farmers, they get squeezed out of that kind of a system. And so we've got then also a pharmaceutical system that benefits by cheap, nasty food that is being promoted through supermarkets. The sicker people are, the more the money goes through the system. And so our solutions are not going to come from outside. You know, we're not going to have solutions coming from government to make us all healthier, to make our farmlands healthier. We can't expect that to happen. We can't expect that to happen from all the big institutions and systems. But what we can see and what we can do is exactly what we're doing right now, this evening. And this, again, is why I so appreciate you being here in this room, because this is actually how we make a difference. We celebrate the farmers who are doing amazing work. We celebrate the food makers who are doing fantastic things. And we as consumers, we all have to eat. We all make a choice every single time we buy something. We're making a choice about which system we want to support. Now, we all love the convenience of a supermarket, for sure. But there can be small habits that we can keep changing and making every day, where we choose to support the farmers who make a difference to our soil. And Bertie tonight is going to talk to us about the importance of that, how that works, why it's so important to focus on improving the soil first, so that you don't have to rely on all the chemical inputs. But then the solutions are two things, I think. One is that we need to do more of this. We need to connect more with each other so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that we can find the solutions faster and easier and keep innovating from there. And it means collaborating and sharing. And then the second thing is that we actually do need to find better systems to change our food systems. So I was telling you just now that I had a conversation a few months back with a local farmer, Rachel. And I said to her, well, how do we achieve this where we can start to really actually help people to make a change? Because if we don't change the food system from the ground up organically, as it turns out, then we're not going to get the solution from the top down. And we're going to be stuck with the default, which is supermarkets, mass agriculture, chemical agriculture, and the sick care system, right? Because it's not really a healthcare system right now. Unless you have an emergency and the doctor can save your life with a surgery, yes, that we have had fantastic advances there. But for everything else, we have to take back our own power. We have to take responsibility for our own health and our own food systems. And what I was so excited about a few months ago is that I came across the concept of a food club. Now, some of you in the room obviously know about the food club because I've been talking about it. But is anyone here who hasn't heard about the food club or a food club, the concept of a food club? And in Zoom, if you can give me a heads up, I'm looking at a screen, I can see you all. How many of you have ever heard of a concept of a food club? Yes, I see lots of hands. Thank you so much. Thank you. So for those of you who haven't, it's such a unique and simple, elegant idea. And the moment I heard it, I thought, this is brilliant. It's not the only solution. There are farmers markets, which are fantastic. There are local delis that we can support, and there are ways to buy directly from farms. But this next option, this food club, is just another one of these ideas. And it's something that I started here for Stanford and Hermanus, where we are right now. I'm telling the Zoom audience, by the way. I'm sure you know that we're in Stanford and Hermanus in the physical audience. So I started this a few months ago, and the idea has just been captivating for me. and for many of the people involved, because it enables us to directly support our local farmers and our local food producers. And it's just a very elegant system because it's group buying. It's a group buying club. And so we have literally we have an online shop where people can go and order their goods every month from those farmers that myself as a host would curate and support farmers like Bertie from Löweland and Rachel from Overberg Pastured Poultry that are doing amazing things, making it so much easier for us as consumers to be able to support them. And they get to set their own price because we buy directly from them. Whereas in a supermarket, they would be priced out. So if you are tuning in from Zoom and it's the first time you're hearing about a food club, there's probably one in your neighborhood and you could go look it up. The system that I use, the platform that I use is called the Food Club Hub. So you can Google that and check that out. The Food Club Hub has about over 30 food clubs around the country. And there's probably one in your neighborhood. And if there isn't, you know what? You could start one if this idea captivates you. Here for us, we've got Harvest Club, and this operates for Stanford and Hermanus, and you can check that out, harvestclub.co.za. So what's been fantastic about this idea is that it's created a community. It's created this group of people. And through this group, we've been learning. And I have learned so much about the value of regenerative agriculture, which is not something I knew too much about. I heard about Joel Salatin and heard about a few of these amazing farmers in America. But what about here in South Africa? What about here in Africa? What is happening here and what are the successes? And how do we know if this form of farming, whether you call it regenerative farming, whether you call it conservation farming, and there's a few variants, how do we know if it's actually scalable? Is this actually something we could do to farm for the future? How do we support those farmers if that's the case? So there's a lot of work that we all need to do to create this whole new food system that's going to replace the chemical farming and the supermarket system and the healthcare system. All of it is combined. So we have a lot of work to do to figure that out. But there's already so much work that's been done. And that's what we're here to learn about tonight and to celebrate. So in a moment, I'm going to ask Bertie to come and speak to us. Bertie is from Löweland Farm in Prieska. This is the Northern Cape. And he's created quite a few surprises with what he's been able to achieve on his farm in the Northern Cape. And for any of you that have been following on the groups, I've been sharing a few of the videos from YouTube that you can see Bertie's farm and you can see what he's been doing. And it's been very inspiring to watch because I think he surprised a heck of a lot of people in the Northern Cape that he came up with a fantastic wine where no one was doing wine in the Northern Cape. And he did it without any chemical inputs, which is incredibly impressive. So I'm going to call on Bertie to come and tell us a bit more. And please give him a round of applause.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Thanks everyone for coming out. It's like a crowd to have, and on Zoom also. That's a bit of a first. So I have to admit, I thought it's a wine tasting. And then I saw everybody's on Zoom, and when I saw Jessica Merton sharing it on the food clubs, I saw, okay, well, now we're being serious here. So yeah, thanks. It's great to be in Stanford. We're staying there with Jessica and Roland, and we just quickly met up with them. And Jessica said, well, there's not much to show you. All these things take so long. And I said, yeah, well, don't worry, because when I realized it's not a wine tasting and I have to do a proper slideshow, I went into my folders to see when I last had a chat or a public speaking, and it was 2021 with the conference that I had in Manitoba, Canada, that I did also on Zoom. And I thought, now I'm going to have to do a lot of work to change the facts and everything, but I didn't have to change anything. And that was 2021. So 2 years passed, and yeah, we're on the same journey. It doesn't feel like a lot of things changed, but I always feel like I was in Uganda, in Kampala, in many moons ago, and you know, they don't have traffic lights almost like we do now, but they have these massive traffic circles, and everybody knows exactly what to do, but all you can do is when somebody moves forward, you move in. When somebody moves forward, you move in. And I think farming and organic farming, and especially if it's complex in a setup like ours, then it's all you can do is move that little bit the whole time to get everything to fall into place, because the challenge is that everything must fall in place at the same time. So yeah, we are organic, mixed organic farm. And before that Manitoba thing, the last time I had a public speaking was at the NOTAL conference in KZN in Bergville. And when I finished my talk, Egon Zunkel said, "Thanks, Bertie. It's great to listen for the first time ever to the organic farmer that doesn't smoke while he farms." So I'm hoping that you can say the same today. So, so yeah, it's great to see so many familiar faces in Stanford. It's great to have my mother and brother here, and obviously Alet and Mira. And yeah, I know there's talk of how scalable this thing is, and from my side, we were in Johannesburg about a month ago to do wine trade shows, and through all these nights, I just realized that I was speaking so much about my father planting the vines. And yeah, he passed now 2 weeks ago. So yeah, for me to continue with that is a big privilege, you know. And I think the other side of that story is how scalable is organic farming. On the other side is, if you have a big setup that's performing like a well-oiled machine, then how do you move into this type of complexity? And I think that's probably what I can share, because I think we all start following Joel Salatin and all those guys that paved the way. But from that side, I think the big thing that they did was, okay, I'm not a farmer, I want to get into farming. I know his first book was You Can Farm, you know, or what's that? You Can Farm, which I also read. And that's great, because now everybody can farm, because you can, no, but seriously, it's like, you know, the barrier to entry for farming is incredible. And now suddenly everybody can farm, because just by changing the way of thinking, because now you can, you know, you can start with chickens, you can start in your garden. And that is massive, I think, for the industry. And permaculture came in, and our late studied permaculture, and we all started with a permaculture journey, or that's how we started. And now suddenly, you know, every hectare counts. But again, to farm a hectare with a lot of moving parts is insanely complex, you know. And in South Africa, where we have huge kilometers to go to your town or your nearest food club or whatever, you know, it becomes a selling thing also, because now you have to be a salesperson and not necessarily firstly a farmer. So that journey for us is a big one, and I hope that I can bring some perspectives, because we've been on a farm for 10 years now. And I think when I started off, I thought I knew a lot, and now I know a lot less than then. And the regenerative thing is also, you know, you try and use less inputs and all that stuff. But yeah, to get to that point is also a very long journey. So yeah, it's great to have farmers here. You know, Jacques is here from Kalahari Wild, and our parents knew each other well in the Bonsmara stud industry, and now we both are doing direct to consumer, direct to restaurants in the next generation. And it's great to have the Moffats here. They've been also mentors for us on the organic journey. We have the first organic winemaker here in the Slanghoek Valley, which is, I think, quite a challenge, because it never rains with us, but there it rains 2,000 millimeters. That's a different story. So yeah, it's great to have. I saw David Ewan there from Middelburg. He's running a mixed herd operation in Middelburg. That's insane to see. I went to his talk the other day in Graafrenet. And also Jessica, I saw Jessica Merton there, and she started all the food clubs, or she was part of it. And I must say the food club concept is just incredible. And I think what that means for us and everyone else is massive. So This was actually for the Canadian guys, just so they can get a feel, but we are in the middle of South Africa, on the banks of the Orange River. So we irrigate, it's the Upper Karoo, Lower Kalahari. You're not allowed to say one of the two, so we're not quite sure which one. We're on 1,000 meters altitude, 7 kilometers from the nearest ocean, so there's no ocean breeze on our grapes. Irrigation is now 270 hectares, of which 70% is organic, and we're planning to convert the rest hopefully in the next year. And then we have 7,000 semi-arid hectares of grazing, where most of our cattle is. So I just want to, the talk is going to be in that order, just the vision that we have, had and still have, our products and our markets, which I think is the driver, because I think your clients need to pull you instead of pushing from the production side. And I think that was probably the biggest lesson for us. And then I want to talk about our practices, because I think that's probably for all the farmers, the interesting one. And then the results and the challenges, there's a lot. So yeah, we had this vision about Loverland Blue 22. And I know if you saw American football movies, they always say Blue 22 for some reason before they do the next move. So it was Blue Ocean because nobody else was doing, I think, what we wanted to do. And the plan was to get it right in the year 2022. And then we didn't get it right in year 2022. Then we had to move on, and we called it the Doenit 25, with a plan to just, stop thinking about it and just get it done. So our plan is to deliver a diverse basket of delicious produce at an affordable price or great value, whatever that means. I think it means different things for everyone, while regenerating our soils, our wildlife, and our social environment, which is, I think, very important for the Northern Cape. So yeah, that's just a few random shots of our team. Our packing team is, those guys are operating because it's a lot of kilometers and a lot of complexity. And we have a lot of interns on the farm from all over, which come and goes. And I think that's great because we have to speak English. That's why I can speak English to you now. In the mornings, because we speak in 7 languages. So yeah, the guys from the Kerkshoop are pulling the shortest straw there. So yeah, I started off with biological. I went to all the no-till conferences. I got inspired by all the guys doing no-till. For me, there was just never any passion in the poison thing. I always felt we could be more clever than that. And also I felt that my father was very, very passionate about the cattle. And I also felt that he started with the integration into our cash crops. And I felt that can be done on also a more intense next level. Especially if you can start doing it inside the growing crops. And then I just realized that we are an irrigation community in the middle of the Northern Cape. So we have a co-op there, but you can only deliver wheat to the co-op and maize. So where the other no-till guys could deliver soybeans and sunflower and stuff like that, and we just didn't have the means. So if you wanted to plant anything else in your rotation, you had to find the markets first. And I remember sitting, a few things happened. And the one thing was that my one farmer friend, the one night I said, I want to do direct to consumer, but it's so far. You have to pay for the transport. And he said, well, don't think you're not paying for the transport now, because the co-op takes that transport money before they pay you out. And I was like, I never saw it that way. But then I realized you're going to pay for transport anyway, no matter what you farm. And secondly, I was starting to do this biological farming. And one night I was sitting with my second cousin, and he said to me, Bertie, just explain to me what the hell you are doing. Because you are now not spraying your wheat, not tilling your soil, and then you are selling it to exactly, you just deliver it and they just mix it with mine. and that's your plan. I said, people need to eat better food and whatever. And then I realized, well, we need to start changing the game plan. And the other thing was a friend from Joburg, Len, they came to visit us, and he said he wants to pray for the food. And he said, normally people pray for the farmer that grows your food. And he said he wants to pray, and he said he wants to pray for everybody that eats the food from this farm. And I felt, just something switched. And I realized that's actually what happens when you really think about what food you produce. So yeah, we met James, and I remember one day somebody told me again about James Moffat, and he's here tonight. They are involved in GAT at the moment. And I remember I searched his name in my mailbox to just see if I can find a number. And I saw like, I think like 10 mails with people mentioning James Moffat to me, and I just never went in because obviously you're just busy with all this stuff. Anyway, I was on a way to play golf in, what's it, Clarence. And I found James out of bloom, and I said, okay, well, I'm coming. And then I almost missed my tee off because we just chatted about everything. But I remember driving to Kirklington, and you drive through this Free State countryside, and you know, every farm sign says OVK and OVK and OVK, which is the co-op. And then suddenly there was this huge, or it felt huge to me, it's probably not that. It says Kirklington, a garden in a veld. And yeah, it was just a big inspiration. And we switched to organic then with some hectares because I think James, the Moffats was the only people growing organic grains for how many years in South Africa? Probably 30 years too early, like we said. But yeah, it was great to see that it works, how you can mold your own wheat. And from there on, we switched to organic. Yeah, and for us, like the passion we all shared since we were small was wine. And with wine, it's always about origin, you know, and getting to the end consumer. And we started thinking about the whole farm and everything we do as wine. So on the farm, our mission is like, you know, when you start talking about this stuff, complexity can get the better of you. But what we always say to each other in the meetings in the morning, it doesn't need to be complicated, you know. So if you think you have to farm with cattle and sheep and goat, you know, but you don't need to think about it like that. You can just think about it as one herd, you know, of ruminants. And then it's not so complicated. And we just try to approach things as that, you know, to try and the monogastrics get the same feed. The guy from Profile, I know, he's like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, it's close enough, you know, it's fine. They'll be fine. And yeah, we have to sell solutions and not products. And a solution is to get proper food from people you trust. It's not about the products because the products change every month as our seasons change and as we make other decisions and so on. And then for everyone on the farm, we try to say that you sell value, not time, which makes, I think, a massive change in people's headspace. So yeah, it's all about our products. Just a few photos of everything we do, from apples and popcorn to flour and meat and everything. Our pick and nut packaging changed at least in the meanwhile. But yeah, that's just some of the photos. So our wines are here tonight. You guys can taste and we can chat a lot about the wines, which is our big passion. But I think we'll chat that one-on-one. And on Monday, I gave a quick talk at a fruit farming guys who's packing for markets overseas, and I just got these photos in. And I think the big thing that we're doing at the moment, which I think is relevant to everyone, is the integration of animals and cover crops into your system. And I think what's crazy for me is, you know, obviously you use what you have, and our instance, it was cattle. I always wanted to use chickens, but you have cattle, so use the cattle. And with time, we started getting the other stuff in. But what they're doing now in California, for instance, is they are planning the vineyard for the animals. And I think that's like opening up like insane new possibilities. So now you're making it higher so the sheep can't eat your bunches. You are planning for to have piglets or your pigs, the young there, when it's too warm, they have to shade. So you start planning for planting your new vineyards, and that really excites me at the moment. So the big thing was we started thinking, okay, our markets is now what's going to drive this. And we started thinking about the end consumer, you know, but obviously you have to, all that logistics, it's cold, it's dry, it's some is frozen, some is just chilled. And you have all this stuff happening, and you tend then to settle for the middle because it's easier, you know, just try and get it at a wholesaler or whatever. But for us, somewhere we made this call and said, okay, well, if we're going to drive 1,000 kilometers with this stock, and just when you get to Cape Town, you hand it over to someone else, you know, that's so silly because you did all the mission yourself. And why not just get in and do the last mile yourself. And that was, for us, was big. So we decided to say, okay, it's first sell or last sell for us, nothing in the middle. If we can't deliver it to a household, then we're just going to sell it to the co-op, even if it's at a lower price or whatever, you know. Let them come bring the big trucks and pick it up. But if we're going to take the cash flow hit, take the risk with the weevils and whatever, do all that stuff, do the milling, do the packing, do the marketing, then we're going to get it to the households. And we just made that call, and I think that made a big difference for us. So we still don't have a wholesale price list, which I think frustrates a lot of people. But unfortunately for us, that was just a big call to make. And I must say, our clients has been massive. And I think we make so many mistakes in the beginning. You know, your stuff comes there, it's not frozen anymore, it's the wrong pack. You order a beef and it's pork, and you know, it's normal bread flour and it's rye, or it's whole grain, then it's not whole grain, and all that stuff. And people were just so relaxed about it and gave us time to fix it. And with time, I think in this month we made a few mistakes again because we just grew a bit. But last month we did 4 of our main routes with. The only mistake was, I think, one courier guy just did a whole grain and a sifted bag. Everything else was 100%. And that was so big because there's so much complexity in it. And for us, that was a big thing. But the last mile is difficult. And I think we're getting to a place where that's easier for us now. And again, because the clients are so relaxed. And I have a good friend in Vryburg, Peter Veld. I know we spoke about them. They also do pasture. They're up north. And the guy's called DF, and he always says, yeah, the big challenge with selling your cow to an end consumer is nobody will, if you sell to Beefmaster or whatever, nobody will ever phone you and say, yo, hy Simbra van jou was aan Matai. So this just the feedback, you know, because when you sell your cattle, everything, nobody ever gives you feedback. If it's what stay is, if it's tough, it's, you know, you never get any feedback. So obviously in the first few months of doing direct to consumer, you get so much feedback, it can be overwhelming. And if you get 10 good ones and 1 bad one, you forget about the 10 good ones. Right? So yeah, that was a big thing. So we still do, with the organic certification, we still do some commodity exports on our pumpkins and a bit of our wines. But I think the big thing for us is to get to a place where we as Loeverland, we farm for, if it's 200 households, it's 200 households. If it's 250, it's 250. But we want to know that we farm for households. That's our main aim. So I just want to switch to farming practices quickly because, yeah, this is a big passion for me, and I've seen so many great stuff at so many farms. But we've pushed the limits on a lot of this stuff, and some of it worked, some of it didn't work, some of it will still work. But with organic no-till, I always joke and say it's like acid jazz. It's like next level, you know. Nobody listens to acid jazz. Nobody even knows any names. It's because you you just have to get everything so spot on, because if with organic no-till, if you make a mistake, you can't use Roundup or anything. You have to till. And I mean, tillage is the last thing that we want to do. So we try to do everything we can not to make a mistake. Otherwise, you know, you have to till, and if you till, the pioneers come back, etc. You start over actually. So one of the big things for us is to green planting, and I think in America there's 3 or 4 farmers that's doing it. I know that was at Rodale Institute has done a lot of work on it, but again, they have legumes in their system. So in our case, we can't plant soybeans. We don't want to plant soybeans. So we do it the other way around. We use a lot of veg and perennials, not perennials, I mean legumes. And then we just need to get the timing right to get our grains in. I'm so glad this video works. It never wants to work. So this is us planting maize into pastures after the animals has been here 2 or 3 times. There's been no herbicides used. This is all just going straight in there, and it's all about timing. It starts off as a mix of, sorry, the question for the Zoom guys is what's the pasture? That's we start off, and again, we also started off with a elaborate mix of 20, 30 stuff, and we narrowed it down to 2 or 3 because at the end of the day, we want to understand exactly what we're working with, have all the plant families in, and we normally use oats as the grain because we don't plant oats as a cash crop, so it's important to use oats. And then we have radish and mustard, one of the two or both. And then we have veg. And the veg for us is slow. So the grains and the brassicas control the mix. And then when we start grazing, we do the ultra high density grazing on there. And then the first regrowth is normally oats driven. And then a second regrowth when it gets a bit warmer, then the veg takes over. So we plan our grazing now to almost graze it too hard so that the veg can take over before we plant. And the great thing about that veg is it breaks down a lot quicker than the oats, and your CN ratio is so much better. So the maize, which is a heavy nitrogen feeding crop, just can feed off that veg. And then it breaks down, and then the weeds want to start growing again, but then the maize is overshadowing it already, if you get it right. Then pasture cropping is it's a guy in Australia. Forgot his name now, but he started pasture cropping where he actually plants wheat into perennial grasses. So we've experimented not with our wheat with that yet, but we've done it with pumpkins. And this was just a photo from the top. After we planted our pumpkins, we just worked the strips on which we planted the pumpkins, and that was into a perennial pasture. That's cocksfoot grass, lucerne, a lot of, I can't even remember the rest, but pumpkins are so quick. So we just graze down the perennial grass. We prepared little strips for the pumpkins. We planted, and then when we are done harvesting now, because we have pigs, we don't even sort the pumpkins. We just sort it on the field. We put it in the export bins. It goes out, and when we're done, we just send in the pigs again. They clean out all the pumpkins that's too small or whatever, and they have all that lucerne that regrows, and they eat the plants. And if the pigs are struggling, we just put the mixed dirt in before the pigs. So then they clean that hardy weeds, especially the goats, like what's that, the wild amaranth and that stuff. And then the pigs can follow. We actually lost a few pigs on wild amaranth, which I didn't know can happen. Intercropping is one of my favorite things. Now, relay cropping is next level, and that's a guy, Jason Malk, who's in America. And what I love about Jason Malk is he always says that if you want to do a trial, do it right next to the big road so that you can fail gloriously. So this was intercropping. I think 2019 we did sun hemp into maize. It was amazing, but the harvester just struggled with that sun hemp. It gets too hardy to get to the harvester. But what we do is we harvest together, and then we separate it afterwards with a color sorter. And also that because this goes to Santa Ana's, the chips, and they need it too quick, so we can't clean quick enough, especially in the beginning. And then they run out of maize. So. But this is something that we'll do again. I love sun hemp because it's one of the only legumes that doesn't have a lot of pressure from nematodes. This failed gloriously. It's relay cropping that we tried with wheat and faba beans. And then in every third faba bean strip, we wanted to put pumpkins in. But because it's organic, we had ryegrass on that field, and the ryegrass just was too much, and we couldn't spray them down. So I realized that we can't put the pumpkins in. It's going to be, those seeds are too expensive, but we still harvested this field, and we just separated afterwards. And the broad beans are something that's good in that system. So with the animal integration, intensive grazing is, I think there's a lot of guys that's doing incredible stuff on the veld, something that we haven't started yet. Still trying to sort out all our water points, because if you want to do it on veld, then normally you need a lot of big dams and stuff, because water is your biggest issue. But what we've done is on our irrigated fields, our annuals and our perennials, we've done a lot of trials. And if we don't have our animals in, then we can't grow any organic crops. And I don't know if anybody tells you different. It's I don't know how people do it, but you need the animals for cash flow, and also just to get all that stuff back on the soil, and to mix it with manure and urine, because otherwise you have to buy chemical fertilizer. And use the cover crops to get that nitrogen in your soil, use them to get the carbon in, use them to break the weed cycles especially. And what I've seen is if you want to grow organic crops, you almost need 2 summers of animals to break the pest cycle before the next cash crop. So it's so long, it's so slow. But still, if you have the animals in, at least you get the cash flow and you get the animals moving. So this is on summer cover crops at the bottom. That's on winter cover crops at the top. The mixed herd is something that I've quickly spoken about, but again, I just said about David, who's also listening now. There's a few guys that's taken that mixed herds and done that on a massive scale, and it's great to see how it works. Because the cows and the sheep, for instance, on veld, they graze differently, they trample differently, they eat different things. And the famous saying from that one guy, I forgot his name, is that South Africa is overgrazed and understocked. And I think that's something that we don't realize, that grass needs animals. So they don't want to be grazed 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row. They want massive animal impact and then rest. So that's something that I've seen my father do on a bit of a extensive version, and I could already see the massive impact just on the grasslands in our conditions. But with mixed herds, I've seen other guys do it on veld, but in our instance, you send them into a field. There's cover crops, there's legumes, there's grass, there's grains, there's broadleaves, there's weeds, there's hardy weeds. And you can send a cow and a sheep through a field with some wild amaranth that's grown out, and they won't touch it. They might trample a few, but they can't eat that hardy, like the stems. But then you put goats with, and the goats just go straight for that. The goats let me take these insane close-up selfies with them, because they just don't want to leave that weed. That's why they're there. In a book is a bliksem, so hier I dink tot hy klaar is. So we integrated this mixed herd into our orchards. This is our pecanut orchard, into our vineyards. And at this stage, it's just, to get to a place where you get the balance right. And unfortunately, the balance is crazy. I think now you need at least 70% animals to run 30% cash crops off. We are almost 50-50, and it's not enough. And to get that going, obviously you need to start selling that. You need to work all those animals. But the point is, if you want to go input free, then that's the ratio, 70 plus. In my opinion, I think maybe next time I see you, I'll say 80%. But this is the mixed herd again, working on that. This goat just probably finished with that hardy weeds. And then the big thing we use our animals for now is the weed control in the vines. And what happened was, we started with the cows, and the cows, you can only use them after harvest, obviously, because they are big, they're large, they break your vines, they will eat the bunches. And then what we did was, this is all, we said, okay, well, let's try the sheep, let's put them in. So now we're lucky because we are on 1 meter, our vines, the arms, the cordons, what do you say? And I think most guys here are a bit lower. But still, the moment that they get bored, they start looking up, and then they start eating the vines. So what we saw is that if you keep them moving, they are naturally born to look down to eat. So if you can just keep them moving, then they never look up and they never touch the vines. And what we saw is that we do this ultra high density grazing, but this is a triangle. This is our Cabernet. So now what happens is, we decided we're going to, with all these, I think this is about 400 sheep. We said, okay, we'll take 3 rows and we'll move them twice a day. But now it's a triangle, so we keep it at 3 rows and nobody changes to 4 and 5 and whatever. And then suddenly they just start eating the vines again. You realize, okay, well, now it's just too small and it's too short time that we keep them. But every year they do eat a bit. And I think what happens is in Prieska, we try to keep the vineyards closed, so we don't want the sun in. Other than in the Cape, they try to keep it open to get the sun in. But still, we get the sheep. They will eat some, but that's fine because then we don't need to break the leaves around the. So they actually do some work for us, apart from just the weeds. That was the cows. I think this was long ago, probably when we just started off with this practice. Also, the Cabernet is the same block. So then the sheep, obviously you get them in there for a while, but it's not the greatest pasture. And you want the sheep to get to a place where you can now slaughter them, get them out. And we feed no grains to any of our ruminants, so there's nothing we can add. So the sheep needs to go out again. But the pigs is a monogastric animal. On our farm, they are the recyclers. So all the pumpkins, all the garlic, everything that's not fit for purpose, all the wheat that gets cleaned, all the bran, everything goes to the pigs. And we put them in the vineyards in these like Joel Salatin, like movable tractors. And we just move them 7 times a day. And that is a constant composting of our vineyards. They're just always in season, off season, we just keep going. The only thing for me is to plan around, because we can only use our bunkies because it doesn't rain there a lot. So we use our bunkies to put the veg and all that stuff in. But the big challenge with veg, it dies off by itself around January in Prieska, and it reseeds itself around around March. But if we graze it once or twice when it gets away, they will die off end of January, February. And if it's the wrong variety, then they release all that nitrogen at the wrong time, which is not great for the wines. So again, for us, it's just using the varieties at certain times to not extend the growing of the veg beyond its season. But what happens now is we have the sows, the young, and then when we wean them, we have this movable fences everywhere where we have the pigs just until they are ready for slaughter. But as soon as you take them away from their mothers, they're so small, they're so used to walking around that we can't keep them in the fences. And pigs are so clever that if they saw once that they can break a fence or get underneath, you'll never get them in again. So for us, this was massive because now from their mothers, they went into these movable cages every day, 7 times a day. They're just always moving. And our pigs is, I think, once in, you're farming pigs for 6-7 years now. Once we had to give them all ivermectin because they had this bit of a scab. But otherwise, nothing. They get nothing. They get born. The first thing they do is they put their noses in the soil even before they drink from their mothers. So they are so wired to get everything they need from the soil. And I think that's the biggest wrong that we did or can do, is to give pigs a cement floor. Because I think that's what just in the makeup of pigs. And I think obviously with the pigs and the sheep, it takes us a lot longer to get them where we need to get them. But again, the taste and everything, and also the inputs are hopefully a lot lower, so we can afford to do that. But yeah, these pigs are there for about 2 months, and then we split them male and female, and then they stay there, and then we'll select maybe 1 or 2 boars or so from the best litters, but otherwise they just go through the vineyards non-stop. You can see those guys' noses just non-stop digging that soil. So then finally we brought in layer hens in January. And what happened was, it was the first thing I wanted to do when I got to the farm. And it's one of the last things now that we did. And when we move these pigs, you move them, they waste a lot of seeds. And that's fine, because that's just the seed that's coming up again next time. But then these alifunca, what's the funca? They just came in swarms, and they just sat behind these pigs. Every day you move them, these swarms come in, and I was like, well, that's obviously where the chickens need to be. So now the chickens came in, we tried them everywhere. We had them behind the pigs, and they just finish up all that, everything the pigs leave behind. They scrap in the manure. And it's interesting that the dung beetle, the ones that likes the pig manure, are the quickest. They are so quick, and they're these small ones. They just break up a pig patty in a few hours, And then the chickens come in behind and obviously use that for protein again. And that's just a photo of them in the vineyards when they moved on and just all the new seeds germinating through that chicken manure. Yeah, so a big passion project, and we've spoken about permaculture here, just pouring wine. A lot of people know about permaculture in this area, and Alette loves permaculture, and she started with a few permaculture courses. I joke, I say, when Alette came back from a permaculture course, I couldn't understand a word that she was saying, so I had to also sign on for one, and I made the big mistake of doing the Jeff Lawton one, and I love Jeff Lawton, but yo, late at night, that's tough. I just remember, what does the chicken do on the roof, and then waiting for a few minutes. But yeah, that just changed my way of thinking about all this stuff, and we decided that in South Africa we got all these courses and so on, but maybe we should just try something and go all out. So we had it's about 2 hectares that we planted. It's the runoff water used to just run through there, and every year, if it's a big rain event, just take extra erosion. So we just used the laser level. We got Alex Creer in, which I think a lot of people know. She came to help us, and Wendy Crawford was there also. And we just made some swales, laser level. Then we cheated everything we didn't like just to get them practical to be 10 meters, so we can get a harvester in if we must and stuff like that. And we planted pecan nuts, which we cut from our own trees, the best ones, to see if that makes a difference. We got in apples. It's not an apple area at all, but it's low chill varieties. And then we got in some pears. We planted everything, peaches. The pigs, unfortunately, the pigs took out all our apricots this year because we couldn't see them between the weeds. But and that's some Chenin Blanc that we want to see if they can use the apples for the trailers. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. But I must say the apples has really, really impressed me a lot. And that's just the pigs now, probably a month ago. That's our big boar. I think his name is Tebe. But Tebe was an intern that left us. I told him the other day that the boar was named after him. I was not part of it. And then, yeah, that's our breeding herd. I don't have a video in here, but just to see how these guys dig that soil. And you don't want to use them in a place where you don't want that disturbance. But for me, when the trees are large now, I know there's so much veg seed lying around, so I don't mind them just going crazy there. And after the pigs, even a week later, all the veg is settled again. The soil is fine. And trees, they don't really mind to have a bit of tough love around the roots like that. So the results are mixed, but I mean, we can see how our earthworms and other worms are coming in, the right ones, the wrong ones, everything is there. For me, just on all the farmers here, we are high pH soils, like 8.2. And if we still farm a big part of the farm, like I said, 70% now, but it used to be the other way around. And when you take the soil samples from all those years, it's amazing to see that the organic mixed operation, the pH is around 6.2, 6.3. Unfortunately, it didn't show any yield increases yet, but it's crazy to see what impact it's got on pH. Soil structure is incredible to see what happens. The pollinators, the predators, and just all the wildlife operating. So as you go on, you see all these extra niches open up and all those flowers. Like we always have flowers on the farm now. If it's not weeds, it's sunflower, it's veg, it's lucerne, there's radish, there's always something. And the bee farmer here, I think he's operating here these days a lot. He used to be the guy up there north. And I remember him just stopping one day and said, yeah, I used to know your father and all these onion seed we did. And he said, but he just had to stop here because he's never driven through a farm with so many honeybees. He was like, where's your corva? I said, no, we don't have corva. He said, okay, well, can I bring mine to come catch some here? And I said, no, but bring me some, then we have, and then we can go 50-50 kind of thing. And the next day he phoned me, there was a Tanny who sold a farm, and she's got 20 korwe. He'll bring him to me, but I can take it. So then our honey started, and yeah, our bee colonies are that's Alex de Wit. He's the guy doing our bees at the moment. Yeah, and the other day when he came to take out the honey, he said he's never seen such aggressive bees ever. So those guys were, yeah. And that's the photo I showed you of the pumpkins from the top in the pasture cropping. That's just just before it closed up, I just put in a fork there, and it's just a lot of earthworms. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges still. This was the same in 2021, and it's still the same. And I think the complexity of running all of this, and we all know the complexity of being a farmer and everything you have to look at, but going into this type of operation, now you're not just a cattle farmer, now you need to understand sheep. And I showed Alet the other day this picture of a sheep reading a book under a tree, and it says 100 new ways to expire. And if you're an organic sheep farmer and you're used to cattle, then your scalp, they die quicker. So the complexity of having to understand all these, parts of a farm, and you have to be an expert on everything all at once. And then the big thing, like I said, with that traffic situation in Kampala, you have to shift all these things at the same time because there's no time. I know James was the one who told me, he said, Bertie, must remember in agriculture, everything works in 6 months. If you can't get something done in 6 months, then it's gone. Because the loans are 6 months, everything needs to be proven in 6 months. But if you go into these systems, you look at 6 years plus at least. So to shift everything at the same time, to secure your markets, and all the distribution. And obviously, I understand that if you are sitting in Cape Town, you don't have a lot of time. You decided that you are not going to go to Woolworths because there's this farmer in Prieska that everybody or your food club host said you must buy from them. Now you are without your favorite pack of mints, and you have to wait for this guy to pitch up, and he pitches up and he forgot your mints. So, or it was the wrong pack or whatever. I understand that that's a massive challenge. And for that, people to say, okay, well, it's fine, next month, So, and again, let's talk about steak, we are all very, your steak must be the best one. Again, you're waiting now, you're not going to your butcher or the slagpaal or whatever, you are now waiting for the steak. And you told all your friends to come on Friday and you buy that steak, it's got no fat on and stuff. So obviously, all of us, you are going and it must be the best steak. If you want to be in this farming and you're organic and you're regenerative, your steak must be the best. There's no excuse. Okay, that's, I think, how all of us think, but still, it takes a bit of time to get there. So partnerships, logistics, to get guys to help us with that stuff. And then the financial sustainability in that phase is tough to go from one financial system to the other because you're going from being financed by banks and co-ops with a certain set of rules. I mean, they will finance you because they know you're going to deliver the maize to the silo. Now you're going to deliver it not to the silo, but to the weevils or to your clients. And now you need to get a different set of finance. And in our instance, we are financing our organic maize by one, starting to farm pigs, and secondly, by Santa Ana's, who's helping us, and they're making the chips, and again, our clients who's buying the polenta and the maize meal. But again, we couldn't do it without the pigs, because now the weevils come in, now at least it can go to the pigs. So needing to get all that, fallbacks in place. And then I think the most important thing, and that's Robin, thanks a lot. And I think you guys are just doing insane work in the food clubs. And I think the restaurants, the chefs that's really going for it, you guys are rock stars, man. Because I think there's not a lot of chefs that's willing to take 3 or 4 sheep carcasses once a month. And that's that, not just loins or just whatever. And it's like Neil at Belly of the Beast, Ben Joostenberg, all the clients, Neil just takes that sheep on the counter, works it, and for the next month, he just spreads it into his menu. And that's massive because obviously it's impossible for farmers to supply you for a month just with shoulder, for instance. And then, I think for us for us farmers to go into this, the whole clientele and the thinking about food needs to shift. And that's why everyone's here, is because it's shifting. And I think there's a lot of people that's working very hard on that. Yeah, this is just the old one that I had in, but yeah, I think this is the one. You either need to go as big as possible or you need to change it. I think that's the big thing. So yeah, thanks. That's that. I think Robin said there's going to be a question and answer thing. So yeah, thanks for listening and coming out. And please let's have some wine.
Thank you so much, Bertie. You know, one of my favorite podcasters and YouTube hosts, Tom Bilyeu, I was watching a video of his recently, and he said something that really struck with me, which I was reminded now while you were talking, because first of all, farming is not for sissies. Eh? Sure, there's a lot of work going into this. But something that Tom Bilyeu said in one of the interviews I was listening to is that he said, as the island of my knowledge grows, so the shore of my ignorance expands. Right? The more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know. And there's always more to learn. So thank you, Bertie, for sharing everything that you have been learning and experimenting with and failing forward and having successes, having failures, having it all. So I really appreciate you sharing with us tonight so that we can all move forward. Okay, so I have a question that I'm quickly going to read from Zoom. And Maret, I wonder if you can bring up Mark Lottig. Mark, I'm so sorry if I butchered your surname. First of all, before I ask Mark's question, I just want to let you know that Share Screen Africa has been helping us to do this live stream. Do you know that this is the first time we are ever doing this? If you're joining us on Zoom, this is the very first time that we're giving this a shot. And I'm so chuffed. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so chuffed that you're here in the room with us. And we actually had load shedding. No one noticed. We had load shedding from 6 to 8. Yeah, well done to this venue, though. The venue that we're at is the Harvest Fork and Farm in Stanford. And they've been incredibly gracious to be able to host us here for these events. And I hope that all of you in Zoom, when you come to visit here, you come check out this venue. So thank you to Share Screen Africa for helping us to make this a possibility tonight. This all happened just in a few days. Huh? This was an idea that I had. Well, the event was happening. We've probably been working on this for just a few weeks. But then it was last week. I thought, you know what? Bertie is coming. He has so much information to share. There are so many people that really would love to hear what he has to say, and we need to learn from him. How about we do a live stream? My husband almost had a freak out. He did. But he is helping manage this superbly, along with Maret and the whole Share Screen Africa team. Thank you to Johan. Thank you to Kirsten. And Maret is helping you there in the Zoom room with all your questions. So I'd like to ask all our Zoom participants to please pop your questions into the chat. And Mark, I have your question here. First of all, he says, top notch. And the question is, have you noticed a change in water retention?
Sure, Mark. Thanks. Yeah, I wish I could answer that better, but all I know is that we definitely give less water on the organic maize than on the conventional maize. But I can't say with how much. I just know when you want to start the irrigation systems, you know, you're like, whoa, I don't think we need to irrigate the organic maize today, but I don't know orchard farming good enough to see the difference. And we started it that way. So yeah, on the orchards, I can't really see.
Thank you. Now, any questions from the audience here in the room? Let me just repeat that question for the Zoom audience. So the question is, what type of yields are you getting on the maize? Maize, wheat.
Yeah, so it's irrigation. So I think the yields on average that for wheat is probably about 9 tons. But to use grains is terrible because grains is tough. To farm like that. But for wheat, we get about 5 to 6 tons on organic. Yeah. But I don't get the 9 tons on the conventional. So for us, it's probably 8 against 5. Yeah. On maize, it's about half. So if we get 15 on the maize, we will get 7.5 on the organic. But the inputs are, yeah. So the big thing is when, just for the farmers, is when we do double cropping in Priska. So we plant wheat, then we plant maize, then we plant wheat, then we plant maize, and then you probably go into Lucerne. But when we do organic maize, we lose the wheat. So you decide to do a single crop, and then your animals need to do all the rest. So when you make that sums, you need to work out the hectare, but also what you lost in that, like the non-yield. So for grains, I'm not sure if the 100% organic thing is the one, but that's the one that we're trying to see if it works now. Because I know if that organic maize, if I give 1 nitrogen at a specific time, area or something, you're probably gonna get the yield from 7.5 to 12. I can't give anything. Yeah.
I have a question here from Peter Kreef on Zoom. And Peter, you asked to Bertie, you asked, have you been able to suppress the nematodes in the pumpkin plants?
Peter, yeah, I knew you were going to ask that because you were the guy that had to dig up that pumpkins. Yeah, now the nematodes, I saw Sheila's story Monday, Peter, and I told her that she told me after that session, she sent me all the reports from nematodes and she said, Bertie, you have got a big problem and I don't have your solution. So I don't know. I think with nematodes, like we spoke again, and she said the thing is just to go all out. So just to get them so high that there's enough predators. But I must say, like I know broadleaves in vineyards and also with grains is what they say you should get less broadleaves in your mixtures. But if you plant pumpkins after Lucerne, then there's no nematode issues. I don't know why. And I think it's just there's enough nitrogen. So we still, again, I can't figure it out. You think you know, and then I even got nematodes on my mustard. So yeah, so it's difficult. But I just want to get back to that yield sum. I think on perennials, it's a totally different story. On annuals, organic is tough because I think the seeds and everything is so selected in that very high performing conditions. So normally when you plant older seeds, it's longer growers, so you're exposed to the weather longer and stuff like that. But with perennials, I've seen, like with pecan nuts, it's almost a no-brainer to be organic, in my opinion, because the trees can handle it, the yields are good. With vineyards, again, we don't have on our farm a competitive study, but our vineyard, the grapes quality and the yield has been great. I never see shortages. But yeah, on annual, the grains especially, it's totally different.
Your perennials, your organic matter, everything's there.
Yeah, so I feel with perennials, you can build almost this relationship. They know the pigs are there, you got the slow fertilizer, they've got time. But if you have a maize crop and they need nitrogen today and you don't have it, then they drop you with 2 tons. But the nuts they have a month to take that nitrogen, I think.
Okay, I've got a question from Zoom from Natalie Texera. Natalie, are you there? Your question, first of all, she said that she loved that saying from Tumbleweed about the island of the shore of ignorance. And she says, thanks so much, Bertie. And then Natalie asked, any composting going on your farm?
Natalie, our composting was again one of those first things like the chickens. And then we were too hasty with the compost. Then we just mixed all the raw materials into a, feed mixer. And we just put it on the vineyards. And that was great. It was just doing this weird composting there. But our compost deeps, we went all out to pack proper compost deeps. And then just when we got the irrigation right, we saw the queer coming through. So then I realized I needed a new spot for the compost. So not doing it yet. But again, I feel like if you go to these like this organic day, not organic, the no-till days and so on. I think the whole thinking goes around building the compost on the field, using the carbon from your stubble, not burning or plowing it, getting the cattle to trample it, put manure on top, then maybe a cover crop with a veg or something, and then just plant your next crop straight into like that thin compost layer. I think that's the idea.
All right, let's see if anyone wants to ask any questions here. No more questions here? Yes.
Yeah, some call it pigweed, yeah.
So the question is, the pigs were eating the amaranth, the wild amaranth, and you're wondering what the result was of the pigs eating the wild amaranth.
Yeah, I think that was one of those like just storm of everything going wrong at the same time. But we just took the piglets out from the vineyards and we put them straight onto a pumpkin field that was just been harvested. Now the wild amaranth, like that's the first thing that comes to the pumpkins when they go down. And then they went seed, which I think was the big problem. And we started off there, it was a half central pivot. So normally if you have a half pivot there where it turns, there's a lot of weeds because it gets some water but not enough. And we started in that, so it was that piece of pizza slice, and that was just a lot of amaranth with pigs that was never exposed to it. And they just, we had 11 dying the first day, and it was like, whoa, what's happening? They go like stiff, yeah. And then luckily there was Peter Vervoort, who's a friend of mine's father. He used to be in the pig industry. I just found him and he said, just show me photos of all the weeds on the field. Yeah. And then luckily it was that and not something else. We moved them away and they were fine. But when they're exposed to it, like every now and then it's normally fine. It was just like they never had it and suddenly they had a lot. Yeah.
The question is, what type of pigs? What type of pigs are you using?
So we bought pigs as the start. I just wanted to see how it works on the pumpkins, and there was another farmer who farmed pigs. I told him, just bring me 20. I'll make them fat for you and give them back to you. And then it worked, and the next year we did it again, but then it was male and female, and then we kept them a bit longer. And then when I saw again, they were piglets. And then we were just pig farming out of nowhere. And it was a land race, but I think there must have been a Colbrook boar like 5 or 10 years ago. And then we got the Bosendal boar from a Durok boar from Bosendal. And because they were also exposed to obviously to outside a lot. And we try to keep them 50-50 now. Because the Duroks are terrible mothers, but their skins they never get burned from the sun. They never get sick. So yeah, we just try and keep them 50-50. So they look like, we had one boar we wanted to keep the pink leg, but everything else was Durok. So they're like that now. But mostly they have got this weird, like pink brown tint now. With spots on.
So how are you managing the weeds everywhere? Queer.
Yeah, the quick is, I think doesn't need translation. Everybody knows that swear word, but if we have a place like that, then we'll let the big pigs loose under the drip lines. So it just takes them back. But I've seen now that we have a few spots in the vineyards where the quick is massive. And the veg, it looks like the veg, if the timing is right, it seems like the veg can outgrow them. I'm hoping that. Yeah, you say, I'll send you a photo if it works and also if it doesn't work.
All right, I've got a question here from Zoom, Scott Pringle. Thanks for your question, Scott. He says, thanks, Bertie, for sharing. He says, we are from a traditional extensive farming setup and have started down the path of permanent crops and have some pecan nuts too. Our problem is that we have sporadic water supply and go for some seasons without decent water. What is your suggestion to get started with?
Yes, I don't know. Probably mulch is probably the best option, if I would say, just to get some mulch in there, if you can. Yeah, and I think then there's a lot of pecan nut guys that you can actually speak to. So I don't know if Scott, if you can send me a message, then I'll try and get you to speak to the other guys. I know, if I remember the story correct, I think root pecan started by accident by not having water or inputs or something. So maybe I'll just give you those guys' number.
All right, we can share that afterwards. All right, any other questions from the room? I'm gonna, oh, yes, Diana.
Have a chat. And I'm not a farmer. I'm a vegetable
Diana?
grower in a suburb. So I'm not a farmer, although I grew up on a farm. I'm a vegetable grower in a suburb, and I have a solitary hen. She's a cook. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they are just gorgeous. They're black and they're covered in white spots, and they've got great personalities. All animals have great personalities. I'm sure that you would agree with me. Anyway, Cook follows me around, tells me when she's hungry, and and I feed her during summer on cutworms from our compost heap, which I dig deeply for, because love is a strange thing. And she munches away, and she lays an egg a day in summer, which is absolutely amazing. But what I wanted to get to was, you haven't mentioned at all, and I find it absolutely useful beyond imagining, is I do liquid chicken fertilizer. I have a big 44-gallon drum, which I keep filled with water, and everything that comes out at the other end of Henny Penny, as we call her, goes into the 44-gallon drum and percolates a bit like a gardening tea. And we feed everything, all our veggies, our strawberries, our everything. And I can always tell when things haven't had their dose of Henny Penny liquid manure, because they start to complain and droop. So do you use that on the farm at all? Do you have liquid manure from all your numerous hens? I'm so envious. I wish I had a few more of them.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is for us, if you have to use liquid manure, then you don't have enough animals yet. So yeah, I think the challenge now is that these layer hens, we started with 200, we lost a lot very quickly, and then the rest is now fine. But again, I think if you have got 100 cows, you're probably going to need about 500 sheep, probably about 10,000 chickens or something. So to get the balance right, I think is massive. But we use, I think the guy is here from Gansbaai, the Verteguano. We use a bit of that as foliars, as backup if we see that plants need it. Yeah, and then on the fields where we don't have cattle, because we don't have enough, we'll use manure a lot, spread manure and things like that. No. Chicken manure is not allowed in organic, fortunately. Yeah, because you have to prove that they didn't use GMO feed, and yeah, I think there's a lot of letters doing around, but yeah, obviously there's not a lot of commercial guys that do the GMO free. It's only profile. Yeah. Yeah, so you have to, in organic farming, you have to use, you only allowed to use working kraal manure. Yeah, so not feeding kraal manure. And with chickens, obviously, that's non-existent.
All right, we're coming to the end here now. I've got another question here from Zoom, and we'll maybe take one more question from the room, and then we're going to be wrapping up. So, Bertie, we've got a question here from Morgan Lee on Zoom. Hello, Morgan. And his question for you is, how do you encourage conventional grain farmers that a different farming system is possible? What do you think is the key issue preventing change?
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't know. I think everyone must do what they must do. I think that's the big thing, especially with grains, because yeah, I think grain is the toughest one to switch. And the challenge for grain farmers is that it's such massive hectares. So to switch it is difficult, I know. And I think it's hard if you don't have your own markets or your own mill. So I think you need to sell everything yourself. But I mean, organic is, you don't need to go organic. I mean, that's a choice we made because James showed us it's possible and we got some of his varieties and so on back in the day. But I mean, there's so many guys that's doing no-till, I think, yeah, everywhere, which is massive. And is, I know I met a lot of guys from Swellendam at that no-till conference in Bergville. I mean, the guys here, I know on this agroecology groups, the grain farmers takes a lot of shots on these WhatsApp groups, but I think, yeah, I think there's great change. Huh? I think there's a lot of great systems happening. I know of farmers that only use Roundup once in 5 years, just to kill lucerne. And I think there's a lot of great stuff happening, but to switch it to organic is massive, but to go to regenerative, biological, or so on, I think there's a lot of steps in between. So I think also with grain farmers, everybody talks about Roundup, but I mean, there's hundreds of other stuff being used on grain, like fungicides and stuff. And I think farmers are now pushing away from it, firstly because of cost, and secondly because they are obviously getting more information. They see other guys trying stuff. And I know these conferences are pushing a lot of practices that I've seen. Yeah, there's people doing incredible stuff on the grain side. Maize with soybeans with. It is just stuff with maize and soybeans to get GMO-free seeds. I think that's the big thing. But on wheat, there's no issue. Like all the wheat in South Africa is great quality. And I think that's probably the first question we always get. And there is no such thing as GMO wheat. Everything is GMO-free. Mostly the farmers farm it proper. And if you're not sure, then just phone the farmer. That's the big thing. And don't ask about glyphosate. That's the last thing. You must ask about a lot of other stuff. I think it's just in crazy times that people use glyphosate on wheat. There's a lot of broadleaves. I know there's a lot of farmers sitting here. There's a lot of broadleaf herbicides. There's a lot of, obviously the chemical fertilizers, but I mean, that's one thing. And then there's a lot of fungicide. And then the dodgy stuff is actually the insecticides. Yeah, and I don't think that's a lot of that stuff used, not in our area. Don't know about here, but.
For those of you here in the room, did you notice that there was some bread made with Loverland flour that our food producers had brought? Did you give it a try? So Charmaine does this amazing salt of the earth. She has a salt of the earth brand where she makes these fantastic French herb salt. And she has some tasters here today with sourdough bread that she's made with Loverland flour. I'm sorry for everyone in Zoom that you missed out. But hopefully you can come join us in future, or you can grab some flour from your local food club or through Loverland and make it yourself. All right, so we are going to take one more question from the room, if there is one. Yes, there is. Rachel. So Rachel is asking if Bertie has found the right ratio of cattle, sheep, different ruminants to work in the lands, that the right ratio that works best.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we change so much. Now it's maize stubble, then it's wheat with weeds in, then it's veg in the vineyard. So I think it's different for everyone. But if you take the cows out, let's say we decide today we're going to weigh the cows to see how much is ready for slaughter, then that day the sheep will break out. So it's like they find this balance where the sheep will follow the goats obviously follow themselves, but the sheep always follow the cattle. And as soon as what we've seen is if the sheep break out, or if there's like a jackal or something, you just put a few cows in and everything settles. So Yeah, I don't know if they do it on purpose, but I think they're curious. So as soon as they see something move, they're like, "Oh, what's this?" And they come. So I think then, yeah. But I've heard people that's done the mixed herds long say that the sheep start, sleeping around the cattle and stuff. But I mean, I haven't seen it in that because we're not using breeding groups as such. For us, it's rather like the slaughter groups that's doing the mixed herd. But the goats are unfortunately pulling the short straw there because I think they need more bushes and yeah. So it's only the hardy weeds that really suit them. Yeah, they need the trees and the shrubs.
Thank you so much to everyone for asking fantastic questions, and all of you in Zoom, all of you in the room, thank you so much. Okay, we have one more question to squeeze in. Sure. So the question there, just if I summarize, what is the biggest challenge that Bertie has experienced from switching from where you were farming before to where you're farming now? Biggest challenge, it's a good question to end off on, isn't it? Biggest challenge that he has experienced so far and how you overcame that.
James, dankie man. It's a boring answer about cash flow.
Well, we have a way to solve that problem. And that's because all of us are actually consumers and we all need to eat food. And so if we little bit by little bit start to change our habits, we support farmers like Bertie. And we support more farmers like Bertie than we do the chemical farmers through the supermarket. And so this is our responsibility. Farmers like Bertie are breaking ground. Their pigs are breaking the ground. And so Bertie's doing amazing work and he's sharing with other farmers. And you can hear how there's a community here on Zoom. Many of you know Bertie. There's a community here in this room that know him. And now we are introducing what Bertie's talking about to so many more people. And that's really exciting. It's very, very exciting for all of us because it means that the more farmers we can get to start just implementing a few of these principles, just even a few, it doesn't have to go all out, right? Just have to start somewhere with a few of these principles. In fact, Mark Stevens, one of our local regenerative viticulturists, he was our speaker at our last event. And he spoke about this transition. And there are various ways to make the transition. You don't have to jump in all at once. And so if we can just share this knowledge and get it out to a few more farmers, but also as consumers, if we need to understand how important it is to support farmers like this, if cash flow is the number one challenge, I was expecting him to say, no, it's going to be something in the soil, cash flow. So this is where it comes back to us. And Jessica Merton, I think I saw you there on the screen a moment ago. If you're still there, please could you share in the chat the link to the Food Club Hub, because I'm sure so many people here are interested in how they can actually now take part in the local food systems. And a food club is one of those ways to do it. Like I mentioned earlier, support your local farmers markets, support your local delis, and buy from the farmers directly if you can. But a food club also makes it really convenient. And so in the chat, if we could get that link for the foodclubhub.org.za, then you can go check that out and see if you can find your food club closest to you. And of course, everyone in this room, I will be communicating with you about Harvest Club because we are now going to have Loverland products in our food club, which I'm super excited about. To our Zoom audience, we are now going to say goodbye to you. I thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate that you're here. We had over 70 people at one point. I'm so grateful that you're here with us. This is not the end, though. We will be doing more of these events. And so I hope that you have signed up on Harvest Club www.co.za/events. If you sign up there, then I will be notifying you of future events that we'll be doing like this. I hope you come join us again. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much, everyone on Zoom.